Welcome to the latest chapter of New York Knicks basketball, where historic milestones are met with a shrug and the only acceptable outcome is a championship. The Knicks have now secured 50 or more victories in 3 consecutive seasons, a feat that has only happened 3 times in the entire history of this franchise. One more win would push them to 52, setting a new high water mark for the Jalen Brunson era. And yet, a significant portion of the fan base remains unsatisfied, restless, and hungry for more. Not because the team is bad, not because the players are not performing, but because this is New York, and expectations have officially reached the highest level this franchise has seen in decades. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates. Mike Breen, the longtime voice of the Knicks and one of the most respected broadcasters in the sport, said it best last week when he addressed the growing tension surrounding this team. He made the point that many fans, many members of the media, and many people inside the organization itself now believe that any season that does not end in an NBA Finals appearance would be considered a disappointment. Think about that for a moment. A team that missed the playoffs 16 times in 20 years at the start of this century. A franchise that managed just 1 playoff series victory during that entire stretch of losing. A club that endured 7 straight seasons below 500 before the rebuild began. That same organization is now being measured against a finals or bust standard. That is not a criticism. That is progress. And it is remarkable progress at that. It is absolutely fair to appreciate where the Knicks have come from while simultaneously demanding more. Both things can coexist. The fan base watched years of dysfunction, wasted draft picks, failed free agency pursuits, and coaching carousel disasters. Now they have Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and OG Anunoby. Arguably the most talented collection of players this franchise has assembled since the era of Walt Frazier, Willis Reed, and Earl Monroe. This is one of the genuinely great periods of New York basketball in the modern era, and fans have every right to hold this team accountable to the highest possible standard. But the uneasiness that has settled over MSG this season is rooted in something real. This Knicks team has been difficult to pin down all year long. The highs have been genuinely thrilling. An NBA Cup championship victory over the San Antonio Spurs, 3 separate winning streaks of at least 7 games, and performances that have shown this roster has the firepower to compete with anyone in the league. But the lows have been puzzling. Losses to the Chicago Bulls, Sacramento Kings, Dallas Mavericks, and Indiana Pacers, teams that a championship contender simply cannot afford to drop games to, raised real questions about this group's consistency and focus when the stakes do not feel urgent enough. Head coach Mike Brown came into this season with enormous expectations attached to him. The organization brought him in after parting ways with Tom Thibodeau, believing that a new voice and a different system would unlock the next level for this roster. Brown was handed what many considered an Eastern Conference Finals caliber group, and the expectation was that he would push them to 55 or even 60 wins. Instead, the Knicks are tracking toward around 52 victories. A solid number, respectable by almost any measure, but one that feels somewhat underwhelming given what was supposed to happen. Questions about whether Brown has the credentials and the presence to coach a team through a championship run remain very much alive. What cannot be denied, however, is that this team has actually been better against good competition this season than they were a year ago. The Knicks currently have 27 wins against opponents with a winning record, a dramatic improvement over the 12-22 mark they posted against those same types of teams last season. Only 4 teams in the entire NBA have more wins against above 500 opponents this year, and that fact matters enormously heading into the playoffs, where every single opponent will have a winning record. The Knicks also finished with a 23-19 mark on the road, which is another sign of genuine growth. The uncomfortable truth, however, is that the window for this specific group may be narrowing. The Indiana Pacers are retooling and getting stronger. Jason Tatum, coming off his Achilles recovery, figures to be fully healthy for next season. The Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, and Charlotte Hornets are all franchises trending upward. The summer options for improvement are limited because the core is already in place, and the roster is essentially maxed out financially. General manager Leon Rose would need a trade of the magnitude of a Giannis Antetokounmpo deal to meaningfully upgrade what is already here. That makes this postseason feel urgent in a way that goes beyond the normal playoff pressure. It truly is championship or bust for the New York Knicks in 2026, and the fans in the building at Madison Square Garden know it better than anyone. The Knicks currently sit at 51 wins and 28 losses, holding the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. Where they land in the standings over these final matchups matchups against the Boston Celtics on Thursday, the Toronto Raptors, and the Charlotte Hornets will determine whether they receive a more favorable first-round draw or must navigate one of the toughest possible paths through the East. Every game from here on out carries enormous weight, and the options are narrowing fast. Let us start with the most critical piece of the puzzle, the race for the second seed. For much of the early part of the season, the Knicks actually owned that prized position in the East, holding it for nearly all of December and roughly half of January. But a mid-season slump allowed the Boston Celtics to leapfrog New York on January 15th, and Boston has not looked back since. Now, the Celtics are sitting 3 games ahead of the Knicks, and a Boston victory over New York on Thursday night would mathematically eliminate the Knicks from any remaining shot at the second seed. At that point, New York would almost certainly enter the postseason without home court advantage in the second round, assuming both the first and second seeds advance that far. That is a significant structural disadvantage for a team that has been one of the best home teams in the league this season. The Celtics have been playing outstanding basketball since the return of Jason Tatum from his Achilles injury. Their late season surge has been nothing short of remarkable, and that makes the Knicks' path to the second seed essentially a long shot at this stage. New York would realistically need to win out and get significant help to overcome that gap, which is an unlikely combination of events. The more pressing concern now is holding on to the third seed, because that race is much more competitive than many fans might realize. The Cleveland Cavaliers sit just half a game behind the Knicks entering Thursday, and they have been rolling lately, winning 8 of their last 10 games. Cleveland has 2 contests remaining, one at home against the Atlanta Hawks, and a season finale against the Washington Wizards. Both are theoretically winnable games for the Cavs, which means New York cannot afford to stumble. The Knicks do hold the tiebreaker over Cleveland, having won the season series 2-1, so if both teams end the year with identical records, New York would claim the third seed. But that safety net only matters if the Knicks can take care of business on the court. The schedule comparison is worth examining closely. After facing Boston, the Knicks play the Raptors and Hornets, both teams with winning records who are fighting for their own playoff positioning. Toronto's the 6th seed with 44 wins, and Charlotte is the 9th seed with 43 wins, so neither club is going to roll over for New York just because the Knicks need a win. Meanwhile, Cleveland finishes against Atlanta and Washington, which is a considerably softer closing stretch. A Knicks loss to the Celtics on Thursday, combined with Cleveland winning their final 2, would likely push New York down to the 4th seed, regardless of how the Raptors and Hornets games play out. It is also worth noting that the Knicks hold an excellent record against both Toronto and Charlotte this season, going 6-1 combined against those 2 franchises during the regular year, including a win over the Raptors in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. That familiarity and track record of success against these opponents provides some confidence, even if the stakes of these final games add a layer of pressure that regular season matchups do not typically carry. Home court advantage will play a role as well, since 2 of the remaining 3 games are scheduled at Madison Square Garden, where the Knicks have been excellent all season long, posting a 28-9 record, the 4th best home mark in the entire NBA. The seeding implications go well beyond the bracket number on paper. The 4th seed would likely set up a second-round matchup with the Detroit Pistons, the top team in the Eastern Conference this season. Detroit went 3-0 against the Knicks in the regular season, winning all 3 games by double digits. That is a matchup New York desperately wants to delay for as long as possible. The Pistons' physicality and star guard Cade Cunningham, who has returned to full health after missing 11 games, represent a genuine threat to the Knicks' postseason ambitions. Every round that separates New York from a potential Detroit showdown is enormously valuable. On the other hand, the 3rd seed brings its own complications. That path would almost certainly lead to a second-round meeting with the Celtics, who have been absolutely dominant since Tatum's return, going 13-2 in that stretch, with 10 of those wins coming by double digits. Choosing the lesser of 2 evils is a genuine debate in Knicks circles right now. What is not debatable is this. Thursday's game against Boston is the most important regular season contest remaining on the schedule, and how the Knicks handle that moment will tell fans a great deal about this team's readiness for the playoff intensity that is coming in just a matter of days. When the Knicks made the decision to part ways with Tom Thibodeau last summer, the move was polarizing. Thibodeau had led the franchise out of irrelevance, building a culture of toughness and accountability that turned New York into a playoff contender. Under his direction, the team had just reached its first Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years. Firing him felt, to many observers, like a significant gamble, especially with a roster that was now deep enough and talented enough to compete for a championship. The pressure to justify that decision has been enormous from day one. 9 months into his debut season leading the Knicks, head coach Mike Brown is still a subject of fierce debate. His supporters point to the team's higher ceiling, their improved offensive freedom, and a style of play that is more modern and adaptable than what Thibodeau typically employed. His critics argue that the coaching change cost New York consistency and defensive toughness at exactly the wrong moment, and that the team's win total, tracking toward approximately 52 victories, falls short of the 55 to 60 games many expected when Brown was handed one of the most talented rosters in the Eastern Conference. But here is the number that deserves far more attention than it has been getting. This season, the New York Knicks hold a 27-22 record against opponents with a winning record. Last season under Thibodeau, that same mark sat at a troubling 12-22. That is a swing of 15 wins against quality competition, the kind of improvement that directly translates to postseason success. Because every team the Knicks will face once the playoffs begin will have a winning record. This is the biggest improvement that almost nobody is discussing, and it may turn out to be the most important development of the entire regular season. The significance of that turnaround cannot be overstated. In the playoffs, the level of competition is relentless. There are no games against lottery teams, no soft stretches to build momentum, no layovers against rebuilding franchises. Every night is a battle against a well-coached, well-prepared opponent. The fact that the Knicks have dramatically improved their ability to compete against elite competition is precisely what the organization needed to see from this group heading into the postseason. Now consider this additional achievement. Mike Brown is on the verge of making franchise history. With a current record of 51 wins and 28 losses, Brown has officially matched Hall of Fame coach Pat Riley for the most victories ever recorded by a head coach in his first season with the New York Knicks. One more win, which seems likely with 3 games remaining, would give Brown that record all to himself and cement his debut campaign as one of the most successful first seasons in the history of this storied organization. That is a remarkable achievement by any standard, even if the broader conversation about his coaching has been more complicated than a simple win-loss record can capture. The remaining schedule does present real challenges. The Celtics, Raptors, and Hornets are all fighting for their own playoff positioning and will bring maximum effort to every game. The Knicks have one of the tougher closing schedules in the league based on remaining opponent strength. However, there is reason for optimism. 2 of those 3 remaining games are at Madison Square Garden, where the Knicks have compiled a 28-9 record this season, the 4th best home mark in the NBA. And as established by that 27-22 record against winning teams, this is a squad that has shown it can rise to the level of serious competition when the moment demands it. It is also worth noting that the Knicks' offensive evolution under Brown has been a genuine positive. The team has incorporated more movement, more ball rotation, and more variety into its attack compared to what Thibodeau typically ran. Players like Karl Anthony Towns have had more freedom to operate on the perimeter and as a pick-and-roll threat. Mikal Bridges has settled into a comfortable role with cleaner shot opportunities. And Jalen Brunson, the engine of everything, has had the creative latitude to make the offense go in a variety of ways that the previous system did not always allow. These are real improvements that reflect a coaching staff that has worked hard to develop its identity over the course of a full season. The broader point is this: the Knicks entered this season with the weight of championship expectations pressing down on every game, every decision, and every result. The noise surrounding the coaching change, the personality debates, and the glossy storylines have dominated the coverage. But quietly, in the margins of the standings and in the game-by-game results that determine postseason readiness, this team has grown. They are measurably better in the ways that matter most when April becomes May and May becomes June. Whether that growth is enough to reach the NBA Finals is the question that the playoffs will finally answer. Mike Brown and the New York Knicks are about to find out.